Okay, good evening. This is Thomas Fried on the Liberty Works Radio Network. This is the Truth Attack Hour, and yes, that's right. We're back with the Truth Attack. So, I got so much stuff on current events that I want to go through today. We probably won't get to any discussion on tax laws this week. So, let's get right into it. We are the Liberty Works Radio Network. And we do need the support of the members of the listening audience to keep the network operating and the broadcasts coming. So if you enjoy the information, the discussions, the lectures, and the guests on the other show on the network, we sure would appreciate it if you could find your way over to the LibertyWorksRadioNetwork.com website and get signed up as a subscribing member, even if it's as little as $10, $20 a month. Every membership helps. And we do need your support to keep the network operating. And if you want to get fully informed on my favorite topic, which we usually discuss every week, which is the maladministration of the federal income tax by the IRS, the DOJ, and for the last 65 years, the federal judges who have made up the version of the tax the same way they made up Roe v. Wade and affirmative action, and agencies have the ability to make law, which of course has led us to the nightmare we're in now. Well, you need to find your way over to tax-freedom.com, start reading and get educated, and maybe pick yourself up a copy of The Simple Truth About Income Tax, which is an immediate PDF download that comes with the documents that expose the whole fraud so that you can show it and teach it to anyone who's interested enough to want to pursue freedom. Freedom comes from God, not government. God's true plan for mankind is freedom, derived through your faith in God. And if you put your faith in any other entity besides God, it will be used against you to betray you and enslave you. And that is the history of government, of mankind. So, what do we got happening? Oh, dear, look at all this stuff. Now, I just do this from handwritten notes. I don't have a written script. There's so much to go through, I probably won't be able to remember everything I wanted to say, but let's just jump right into it. The Supreme Court, of course, today was questioning the attorneys in the case involving Colorado removing Donald Trump from the ballot on the whim of a single Democratic unelected party official, the Secretary of Elections in Colorado. Of course, her arbitrary and capricious action on her own initiative and without any legal proceedings was appealed into the Colorado Supreme Court, which upheld it, amazingly, because, of course, there's no due process, there's no evidence, there's no facts, there's no trial, there's no conviction, there's no accusation of insurrection or any kind of rebellion against Donald Trump. In fact, he was exonerated of those charges during the impeachment trials, but the Colorado court upheld it. So, it's in the Supreme Court. They were questioning both attorneys, and the Colorado Supreme Court is going to get told to go home and shut up, because this looks like a 9-0 or 8-1 decision. Even the liberal judges on the Supreme Court were grilling the attorney for the Colorado argument. And, they just went after him on everything. Should one state be allowed to do it? Where's the insurrection? They didn't even get to what evidence or due process was provided within this holding by the Colorado Supreme Court. They just went right after the fundamental chaos that's going to be created if individual states can, without trials or evidence or process, strike candidates from the ballot in an election. And so this looks like it's Colorado's going to get wiped out. All of the states trying to remove Trump are going to get shut down. And again, this looks like a 9-0, really. None of the justices questioned favorably. All of them were extremely critical and raised points like, what happens if one state is allowed to do this? Will all the other states follow suit? Will the Republicans retaliate and remove Biden and Kamala Harris for engaging in rebellion since, well, actually, you could charge Kamala with insurrection, couldn't you? Because she supported the Black Lives Matter protests, insurrections, that actually set up chop zones, where they didn't let people in and claimed that their chop zone was under a new government. Now that's real insurrection. They closed federal courthouses, didn't have people have access, and had armed guards walking around the chop zone with AR-15s. That's an insurrection. Oh, but none of them got charged, not even with the crimes of arson, robbery, assault, that we saw video evidence of in every city in the country where Black Lives Matter was allowed to run amok. One of the items I was going to throw in today was, why don't we raise the stakes and remove Biden from the ballot? In Texas, Florida, Georgia, Virginia, and Nevada, they all have Republican governors. Just take him off the ballot. He can't run. So, it doesn't look like that's going to be necessary. But as I said, the provision in the Constitution doesn't just talk about insurrection as a cause for being ineligible. It also talks about rebellion and giving aid and comfort to the enemy, like the cartels or Iran or Hamas. Gee, I don't know. So, as I said, it doesn't look good. The Supreme Court's going to get this one right. Knock down Colorado, shut down all the other states, and piss off the whole liberal country to no end. Okay, next. Well, what do you know? The special counsel for the Biden classified document investigation case has made its report. They finished their investigation and put out the report. And lo and behold, surprise, surprise, they're not going to charge Joe Biden. Gee, that's exactly what I told you was going to happen when they made the appointment. It's a setup. It's a song and dance, a distraction, a red herring, intended to make you think something's happening when in fact what's really happening is they're sweeping it under the covers and out the door so that nobody will see about it. For the whole time here, it's been going on. They've been yelling and screaming about Donald Trump, special investigation this, charge them with that. Nobody's heard a word about the Biden investigation. Because, of course, it's a cover-up and a whitewash. It's clear evidence, the double standard of justice that now exists in this country under the Joe Biden administration. I mean, this is just like Hillary. Comey investigated Hillary and said, well, yeah, she broke all these laws, but nobody would prosecute her because there wasn't intent, which is insane because classified document charges go to carelessness, recklessness, and negligence, not intent. They're one of the few crimes that you don't need to show intent. All you need to do is show that the documents, they were negligent with them or careless or reckless. Bang, that's it. Doesn't matter if you intended to be. Accident? In jail for a year. And there are a number of Pentagon officers who have suffered that fate for accidentally allowing a potential exposure, even where there was no exposure that occurred. Well, Merrick Garland is, gee, what can you say? He doesn't seem to be a lawyer. He seems to be a creature of the pit, a political animal. And of course, just because they didn't recommend prosecution here, Biden is gloating and bragging today about supposedly being exonerated, I guess is how he feels, in the special counsel report by being declared within it as an elderly man, read an incompetent individual with a poor memory, again read with senile dementia, who can't remember important dates or events in his own life. He wasn't able to tell them during the 5-hour interview when his term as vice president ended. He didn't know when he was in office or out of it. He also didn't know when his own son, Beau, died. So this man has lost his mind. He's no longer physically or mentally competent or capable of being president of the United States. This government has been co-opted. And by whom, we can only wonder, other than the socialist cabal we know is behind all of this illegal nonsense. The report, of course, concludes by saying that no criminal charges should be pressed because the man wouldn't be perceived by a jury as being competent and wouldn't be deemed, probably, competent to stand trial. So Joe Biden is gloating about the fact that he's portrayed as being senile with no mind and clearly not mentally capable of governing the country anymore, which we saw just the other day when he was up on the stage speaking about the Middle East conflict, and he couldn't remember the name Hamas. He's gone, people. He's gone. It's the double standard of justice by a weaponized DOJ that is the worst Department of Justice in history. Merrick Garland, as I said, is not a lawyer. He is a political animal, a creature of the pit. And all of this went down just like I told you it would happen when the special counsel was appointed a year ago. And on top of all of this, what other evidence do we have that Biden is not mentally or physically competent, mentally competent, physically capable of serving? Well, how about the videos of Biden the last 3 years? Think that'll do it? How about all the audios of him for the last 3 years? That might do it. Oh, and what about all of his medical, physical evaluations? Oh, that's right, I forgot. He hasn't had any. Biden has had no medical evaluation results released to the public, physical or mental, in over 4 years. His entire time in office, including his entire time in office, and none the year before in the election. No health exams at all, physical or mental. Do you wonder why? After watching them stand on stage, Hamas. Oh, yeah, that's right, Hamas. Oh, yeah, right. Oh, my God. And I've said before, why does this man want to be president? He does nothing but run away. He runs away from the reporters. He runs away from questions. He hides in the basement. He never speaks to the American people. What's his policy platforms for the next 4 years if he wins president? Going to let another 10 million illegal aliens in? Well, that was what was in the border security bill, supposedly, which we're going to get to and talk about in the next segment a little bit. What's his plan? Where's he going? Why won't he face a reporter? Is he really a coward? That big of a coward? He couldn't confront Putin on the Ukrainian border to stop the invasion? He can't confront Iran or the Houthis, 170 attacks on U.S. military. You're at war in the Middle East. Biden's just not telling you. They've been waging war on you for months. He runs away from reporters. He runs away from questions. He hides in the basement. He's afraid to speak to Congress. He's afraid to talk to the American people, even from the Oval Office on a script. 40% of the time spent on vacation. Why is he running for office? He does nothing but run away from the office and hide his head in the sand at the beach. We'll be back in 5. This is Thomas Fried on the Liberty Works Radio Network. Where is that break? Okay, this is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. This is the Truth Attack Hour, and I'm just going to get right back into it. As I was saying when we came up on the commercial break, the special counsel report on Biden's classified document case says that they're not going to charge him, even though he broke all the law. It wasn't stored securely. They found it with basically a pile of garbage in a garage that wasn't secure or locked. There are pictures of the documents in boxes taken from the street through the open door. So Biden lied when he said it was in a locked garage. It wasn't. The door was open all the time. And Hunter was there. The person selling access to foreign governments, the Ukraine, China, was there with access to the classified documents. And Joe Biden wasn't president. He had no right to take any documents, unlike Donald Trump. So, anyway, like I said before, he's gloating about being portrayed as an elderly man, an old man who can't remember dates, events, and details in his own life. I said, no. He's not remembered as a sympathetic old man. He wouldn't be perceived as, he's seen as a pathetic, senile man who has lost his mind and is no longer competent or qualified to serve in office. Okay, so let's go on. Immigration, oh yeah, to impeach Mayorkas. The whole thing is a mess, right? The immigrants, the millions of them that they've allowed in, have now gone to the Democrat, mostly liberal cities, because that's where they don't get arrested, and have formed gangs, or were gangs, and are now preying on the American people. We had 6 or 7 attack a police officer in New York, 2 officers, and beat them, and New York released them without bail. And then an organization helped them to get on a bus to leave. But they were caught in Arizona. They were trying to get to California or back to Mexico. So they're probably going to be brought back to New York. He can't let them go after this. He's going to have to put them on trial. But in addition to this, you've got the incident where it's on video. An elderly woman, 62 years old, was attacked by a drive-by motorbike, grabbed her purse, knocked her over, dragged her down the street into an iron bar, and then off down the street with her purse and belongings. They robbed her, attacked her, assaulted her. So congratulations, Joe. All of your illegal aliens have turned the country into a third world nation. So, of course, the Republicans, because of all of this, had been working to impeach Secretary Mayorkas for basically abdicating and violating the law and enforcing policy that is a clear violation of law. It violates all the statutes about preventing aliens from coming in, giving them aid and comfort, harboring them, sheltering them, transporting them. Every single one of the provisions of this statute the federal government has violated over 1 million times as a result of Mayorkas' policies. He should be impeached. But the Republicans fell short because 4 Republicans didn't vote the party line. I haven't heard why, but I don't care. These people should be kicked out of office, voted out of office in the next election. They're not on the party line. Everybody knows that even if Congress impeaches Mayorkas, it's not going to get through the Senate. But you have to go through the motion to show the country how disturbing it is to allow this man to continue to run the policies he has, which are destroying America, overwhelming all the social services in every border town on the southern border, and bringing in fentanyl, criminal gangs, smuggling. I mean, Biden has become the partner of the cartels. They just bring people to the border, deliver them to the federal government, and they fly them or bus them to wherever they want to go. And then turn them over to the other end of the cartel operations. The people pretending to take them in, take care of them. They just pick up their slave at the other side and put them to work. Sex trafficking or child labor or it's just, I mean, Biden's foreign policy is insane. So, the 4 Republicans who voted against the bill: Mike Gallagher from Wisconsin, Tom McClintock from California, Ken Buck from Colorado, and Blake Moore from Utah. So anybody listening to the broadcast who hears this on YouTube or elsewhere, if you live in one of those states, call our offices. Tom McClintock in California, Ken Buck in Colorado, Blake Moore in Utah, and Mike Gallagher in Wisconsin. Call their offices and let them know what you think. And I've got another point on this. For the last 3 years, Mayorkas has been telling America that the border is secure, that they have things under control, and that it's challenging, but they have it under control, and it is secure. Now, what I want to know, if that's true, what the hell does Biden need a new law for border security for? It's been calm and secure for the last 3 years. Why is Biden out there telling us the border's a mess and the Republicans won't help me clean it up? Which is an absolute lie. He made the mess. The Republicans passed a bill, H.R. 2, that the Senate won't take up under Schumer. Instead, Schumer passes back this piece of crap, this nonsense, that literally codifies the existing operations. It doesn't stop entry. It allows 5,000 a day. That's 1.8 million. 200,000 gotaways, 2 million a year, another 8 million on top of the 10 he's already let in. And hey, he isn't enforcing the current laws. Why do you think he would enforce anything about the new law that wasn't in line with his policy objectives, which we're going to get to in a minute? So for 3 years, the border's been secure, and then all of a sudden in the last week, oh, it's not secure, it's a mess. Texas National Guard takes over, and in the area they took over, illegal crossings went from 10,000 a day to 10. 8,000 to 10,000 a day to 10. 10 people. So, of course, the Texas governor, Abbott, is expanding the National Guard operations to try and cover more parks, more areas where they have a lot of crossings, and shut it down. And this just shows that the federal government and Joe Biden could have done this at any time, and he's intentionally not doing it. So what the hell do they need a new law for? And how the hell is it Donald Trump's fault that you can't get a bill out of the Senate? So you don't need to wonder why the Senate bill stalled there. Even though they passed it initially, they couldn't get the cloture vote to send it out. So I guess some Republicans changed their mind about allowing it. And of course, we all know why, right? The bill died because they've kept the text of it secret for 3 months. No one was allowed to see what was in it. It was negotiated by good grief, he's based on a senator from Kentucky who supposedly leaving. I guess he's leaving because I can't remember his name. McConnell. Mitch McConnell, of course. Good grief. So he did it in sealed chambers with Schumer. And what's in the bill is absolutely horrendous. It allows the president to suspend operations. It requires analysis and reports to implement them. It allows so many a day. It codifies the current processing of as many aliens as they can. It doesn't put remain in Mexico back in place. It doesn't put asylum only through legal ports of entry, not at the border. I mean, it literally codifies the insane operation the Democrats have been running for the last 3 years. Let as many illegal aliens in as possible. And of course, what's now being said is what was obvious, as I told you 3 years ago, that this is intended to do 2 things. One, to replace the persons leaving the liberal states because of economic conditions, both as voters and as persons to be counted in the census. And that's really the most important element of all of this, in my opinion. Because let's face it, as voters, they're being registered to only vote in state elections. I say, yeah, right, check. Like they're going to know the difference between a state election and a federal election when they're sent a ballot encouraged to vote and vote in the same place, the polls, as they do for the state. So make no doubt about it, they're intended to be voters, even though they're not citizens. But that will only control the politics in those states: California, Illinois, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Connecticut, Maryland, Colorado, Oregon, Washington, the die-hard blue states that are always going to be blue for whatever crazy reason until the people there wake up. But what's happening, of course, is in those states, the people who are conservative are leaving. The taxes are too high, the crime is too high, the quality of life is deteriorated. So citizens are leaving those states. New York and California both lost seats in the last census, and they don't want to lose any more. So the aliens are being brought there to become voters, just like I told you 3 years ago. But that won't really do anything because those state politics are going to be blue anyway. But what it will do is, because citizens are leaving those liberal states, in the next census, their representation in Congress will be reduced. They won't have the same number of representatives in Congress or electoral votes in the election that they had. It's going to be reduced. So how can you prevent that from occurring when so many people are leaving? Well, you have to bring in new people to be counted in the census. And they just got the ruling a while ago, last census, that they can count illegal aliens. So you're giving representation in Congress to illegal aliens. Now, if California and New York can pile 12 million illegal aliens into New York, Los Angeles, and Illinois, those states aren't going to lose representatives and electoral votes. They're going to gain them. All based on foreign persons, illegal foreign persons, having come into the state. And this is what the Democrats are really trying to do, because they're going to get challenged on the, hey, you can vote in the elections. That can be shut down by people within each state taking up cause and suing in the court to not give representation to people who are out of state, shouldn't be represented in the state legislature. But they've already got the ruling that you can count these illegal aliens in the census. And I say you should count them, but you put them in a side column, so you know how many there are. But you don't let them have representation based on importing 6 million aliens to replace the 1 million citizens that left. That's a fundamentally dishonest misrepresentation of the American people and a forfeiture of their right to proper representation in both the House and in the electoral vote count. So it won't really do any good for liberal states to have laws that don't assist the illegal aliens, which will force them to move to the liberal states that do have laws that help them and budgets to pass out money for free housing, free food, free health care, free phones, free transportation, everything else. Billions of dollars are being reprioritized for aliens by the Democrat Party to win their votes in place of the votes they're losing from American citizens, and to keep their electoral and congressional representation numbers high instead of them being diminished, which is the natural course of what should happen when many, many people, millions, move out of a state instead of into it. So it's not just about blue voters. It's about warping representation through a fraudulent census count that counts people that shouldn't be counted towards representation in Congress or votes in the Electoral College. The Democrats brought all of these poor, uneducated, unskilled, unemployable, high cost to society illegal aliens with no money, no ability to speak English, no employable skills, to bankrupt the cities. So the federal government, allegedly, theoretically, hopefully, I guess is what they're thinking, will step up and give them billions of dollars. But that isn't going to happen if Joe Biden doesn't win the election. All of these cities are going to be stuck as sanctuary cities with millions of people and no taxpayer base that wants to fund them. Okay, this is Thomas Fried on the Liberty Works Radio Network. I'm just going to get right back into it. As I was saying, when we came up to the last break, the Democrats, Joe Biden, they're bringing in millions of illegal aliens, both to become new voters in the states as blue voters ultimately in federal elections, and to warp the census. And I was thinking, instead of sending them to Massachusetts, California, and Chicago, why don't we ship them all to Delaware so that when Joe leaves office in 4 months, he can have them all on his beach and his front yard and his city streets, and hopefully it'll be he or his wife that gets assaulted by one of them. Now that would be karma. So, there you go. Send them to Delaware. Let Joe live with them. Okay, last week I talked about Texas being authorized under Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3 to engage in war as a result of being put into imminent danger by what Mexico is allowing to occur. So, it's not a Texas internal problem. It's coming from Mexico. If you're going to engage in war, you need to wage war, not in Texas, but against Mexico. And of course what that means is Abbott should just use the Texas National Guard to move on the Texas towns that share a border with Texas. Just seize control of every border town on that border. Seize the Mexican side. Move the Texas National Guard in, take the police station, the political office, and the utility for the entire sector. And use the military to kill the cartel members, who will be the only people that fight back. And because the military, the Texas National Guard, are killing the cartel members, the Mexican people will welcome the invasion. Because, of course, we're not going to keep the property. You take the towns and the property, you seize the lands, you occupy the towns, killing as few civilians as possible who will ditch and chasing out the authorities who will run away, shooting down the cartel members that try to fight back, and then you force the Mexican government to use its military to, 1, stop the flow through its southern border of migrants from South America, so that you can, 2, have them also defend the Mexican side of the border against illegal crossings on our southern border, like Trump had them doing. Now you put the Mexican army back on the southern border to stop the source, and you put the Mexican border on the northern border to stop the problem from crossing. And then, when the Mexican government says it'll do that, the Texas Guard withdraws and gives back the towns, which the criminal element will have been removed or chased away. At that point, it will be up to the Mexican authorities to preserve that vacuum of criminal activity that will be returned to them, or to return to the corruption that has enabled the situation to go so far that it's necessary for Texas to invade Mexico, to compel the Mexican government to control what happens on its own borders. Okay, so what's coming up next? We got a cash crisis on Main Street, people. Debt is through the roof, 34 trillion. Credit cards are maxed out. Loans are maxed out. Mortgages aren't being written. Equity lines aren't being written. Credit cards aren't extending. Main Street is running out of cash. And in a debt-based system where all the existing debt has to be serviced, in addition to raising enough capital to proceed forward at the same quality of life you've had, it's a real crisis. And the nightmare is that there's $5.4 trillion on Wall Street, and the economic reports are being rigged. They talked about a big jobs report. It's all part-time jobs. And the biggest employer is the government. And the national gross domestic product isn't growing as fast as the national debt. So they're buying domestic product and losing money with every dollar that you produce. It's just crazy. They're just spending money to artificially create economy at the highest levels, but Main Street can't get a loan. And Wall Street has $5.4 trillion sitting in the money market accounts making 4.5% on the short-term interest rate. And people are pulling their money out of the banks to go and get the 4.5 instead of taking the 2% on the bank CD. So the banks are running out of cash. The American people on Main Street are running out of cash. Wall Street isn't going to jump in and give you money back. They're putting the money into the stock market every time it pulls back 300 points. Now, at some point, this is going to break, because the banks are not only this withdrawal pressure, they're also under the pressure of taking on the real estate losses that are coming home. And right now, New York Community Bank Corp is in real trouble. They look like the next domino to fall, and they could trigger others to go with it. All of these empty office buildings are creating monumental losses for the banks as the mortgage holders walk away, hand it back to the bank. They're not going to refinance. They're not going to refinance. They won't take on the exaggerated valuations of 5 years ago that they were financed at then. They're not going to refinance it. They're going to walk away from it, hand it back to the banks. The banks will have to put the losses on the books, and that will make hundreds of them insolvent. So we have a problem. We don't have a good, strong economy. You have baked statistics that are revised 30 days later downward, and when investigated turn out to not be so much good news. As long as the yield curve is inverted, banks won't be lending. In a debt-based economy with $34 trillion in debt to service, the fact that no new money is being brought into circulation through the banks' lending is real trouble. And the fact that the Federal Reserve Bank Board doesn't see this is crazy. Just crazy. Okay, let's move on. Has anybody noticed that everything the Democrats accuse the Republicans and Donald Trump of doing is exactly what the Democrats have been and are doing? It's just pure projection. And have you noticed that the Democrat legislation always does exactly the opposite of how the act is named? They passed the Inflation Reduction Act, remember? And what it really was the Inflation Production Act. It didn't reduce inflation, it produced inflation, and there's still another $2 trillion to be spent on that in the next 2 years as the contracts get let. Oh, and this last bill, it was the Border Security Bill. No, this was the Open Borders Act. The Open Borders Act, which of course is what's going on now, in violation of law, all under executive orders that Joe Biden issued, in which he refuses to rescind. Instead, he says it's Donald Trump's fault and the Republicans. He created the problem. He could undo it in a minute. Texas has shown him how. But no, he wants to blame it on Donald Trump. Meanwhile, the Democratic cities are going under. The American people are being replaced in the budget priorities with criminal, illegal aliens. Oh my God, how could anybody even begin to think about voting for this party after what they've done to America over the last 3 years and what it looks like what's going to happen in the next one? Okay, Corinne Jean-Pierre says it's the Republicans that have been opposing them all along. They won't help with the border. They've been blocking them. Biden put the bill out there and the Republicans wouldn't do it. Well, wait a minute. Didn't Joe Biden have a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate for the first 2 years of his administration? The Republicans had no ability to block anything. It was the Democrats who didn't do it, because they had no intention of doing it. They're going to load the country with as many illegal aliens as they can get in the 3.5 years. And in the last 6 months leading up to the election, they're going to claim it's the Republicans' fault because they won't pass a new bill that doesn't provide border security. It actually codifies the processing of 2 million aliens a year, which will, of course, not be enforced. So it will be 3, which will be another 12 million or 25 million aliens in 8 years of Joe Biden's office. you won't recognize your country or your cities or anything else about America. You won't recognize your own people. And you won't be able to communicate with them because they don't speak English. And the government will, of course, start providing materials in 20 different languages, and before you know it, the United States is the Tower of Babel. Or Babel, if that's how you biblically have heard the pronunciation. The Tower of Babel. A country of people that couldn't communicate. And what does Joe do? Oh, that's right. He comes out and calls a lid on the day at 11 a.m. and goes back to take a nap. He can't work. He does 1 hour of activity. He needs 24 hours to recover. Probably come down from the drugs they used to wake him up for the 1 hour of work. And how's the foreign policy working out over there? The border crisis, Iran, nuclear weapons development, funded with billions of dollars, which immediately resulted in the Houthis starting to attack, and it's now up to over 170 attacks by Middle Eastern forces allied with Iran, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, and of course Hamas in Gaza. That was all funded by Iran. And Biden, under Biden's term in 3 years, 4 embassies have closed. The Sudan, Afghanistan, Ukraine, and Belarus. The status of the United States all over the world is being diminished. And we, it is reported all over the world, have the worst border on the entire planet. The worst border on the entire planet. Yeah, that's how Joe Biden's foreign policies are going. Have you noticed? We just saw it. Biden can't talk anymore. The special counsel report that says he's an old man who doesn't remember should have mentioned that he's not capable of talking. We saw him talking about the Middle East conflict. He couldn't remember Hamas. He won't even go to address the American people at the Super Bowl halftime, which is a tradition. And of course, it's not an interview that they do at the Super Bowl. It's a conversation. I mean, you know, they ask him about the flavor of the ice cream. They'll ask him at the Super Bowl if he likes his hot dogs with mustard or ketchup. I mean, it's a conversation. And they don't think he can even maintain or participate in a conversation on national TV. They're afraid of what he'll say. They're afraid he won't be able to do it. They'll just space out and say something stupid, like everything else he says. And Trump, of course, today stood in front of the reporters, took questions, fielded every single question they had, answered them all intelligently, and gave them his side of the court proceedings and the Supreme Court's review. He is competent, intelligible, capable, and showing it. Biden is hiding in the basement with his head buried in the sand at the beach on vacation because he's afraid of reporters and asking questions. He's afraid of Donald Trump. He's obsessed and diseased mentally with Trump derangement syndrome. It's altered his ability to think clearly. And if you're going to use mail-in ballots, they should only be sent to people who specifically requested them in writing and are registered voters. No unlimited mail-in ballots anymore. That's how they corrupted the last election, and they're going to try and do it again. This is Thomas Freed. We'll be back in a week. Thank you.